In this video, I'm going to be working on my African cultural mask, and here you can see I'm just smoothing out some details from the previous video and just really making sure that everything is well attached and wet enough so that I can add some more clay. Mostly I'm working with coils for any kind of details for this mask. Here you can see me making an exaggerated eyebrow area. And I'm not scoring it simply because as I blend it, it really will help attach it well. So make sure that if you're not scoring something, especially something that's kind of smaller like a coil, that you do really blend it well so that the clay becomes a part of the face of the clay. And as I've said before, African masks are often really exaggerated in facial expressions. So I'm kind of emphasizing the parts around, the eyes and the nose and the mouth, and really adding that detail to make this a more expressive mask. So you don't need a lot of tools. As you can see, I'm using a sponge and my wooden knife. Of course, you can use a popsicle stick. And a lot of it's just blending and using my hands. So depending on the mask that you're making, you don't need necessarily a lot of tools for it. Right here, I'm cutting out the extra part of the clay to really define the shape of the face. As it gets a little bit drier and starts to really form around that newspaper mold that I made, I can see where it's going to sit against the table and, of course, therefore, sitting against the wall. So I'll just kind of get rid of that clay for now. Notice that that scrap of clay, I put it in a bucket of water because it's gotten a little dry. So any scraps that I'm cutting off of the mask, I want to make sure that I'm going to hydrate it so I can put it back in the bag and it's wet enough. So here I took the form off to just kind of get behind it and make sure things are well attached in the back. Now, notice that it's just a little bit floppy. So here I decided it wasn't quite ready to take the form off. So I put it back in to keep supporting the facial structure. So right here next to the eyes is at a pretty ideal place to put a couple of holes in order to tie any kind of string to hang it up. A very simple way to hang up a mask. You can do other things as well. There are ways to kind of put little ledges behind the mask around the forehead area, but 2 holes are very, very simple because you can just tie some strings with a knot, and that takes care of that. So a lot of what I'm doing right now is just really smoothing it out and kind of refining the shapes of the lips and the nose and the eyes, and making sure I've gotten any kind of lines or cracks that I might have missed earlier. So now I'm adding some more detailed accents to the piece to give it a little bit more interest and refinement. And as you can see, I'm using coils again. So as I'm making this mask, because I've made many African masks in the past, and by studying very closely details of a lot of the masks and from different cultures in Africa, I kind of have some ideas memorized. This isn't specifically referring to a certain mask that I've looked up. This is based off of many, many masks that I've looked up. So it's just for demonstration purposes only. I can't tell you which culture this is. Specifically, it's literally just a loose interpretation. And you can see here with my wooden knife, I'm just getting that blended in, making sure that it's well attached as I build up the details of the face. So it's starting to come together. It's always a good idea to add a little bit of water afterwards, really kind of blend in those lines and soften them, soften the tool marks. So I'm making a lot of kind of quick decisions on where I think some more of the details go, and I can tell that the nose wasn't quite defined enough. I really wanted to exaggerate it even more. So depending on the style of mask that you use, you could be using a fair amount of coiling. You could be adding small details like little pieces of clay that you kind of score and attach on. It really depends on which culture you're choosing and what the emphasis is for the mask. Coiling is just a really nice way to do it. All right, so I let it sit for about a day because it was just getting a little bit wet from all the work that I was doing on it. So now I'm ready for kind of the final refinement of my mask. Notice that the form or the newspaper is still underneath supporting it. It's not quite ready yet. And it's better to just have that form in there than pull it out immediately, and then your face mask just sinks in, and you want to make sure that that doesn't happen. The newspaper doesn't hurt anything, and if anything, it kind of keeps it from getting perhaps keeping too wet. You want it to dry a little bit as you go. So when you're working on your mask, really look closely at any details, anything that you might have overlooked the day before. Make sure there's no cracks and make sure that the edges are smoothed out and everything is blended really, really well. So here I've got a bamboo skewer and I'm just making little dots. I'm kind of taking the stick and twisting it just a little to really make sure that that hole is nice and clear. And this is just kind of an accent to give it a little bit more of a finish. A lot of African masks that I've seen have kind of a dot pattern reflective of kind of a lot of styles in certain cultures that would paint dots on their faces or tattoo certain dots on their faces. And so this is reflective of that. And the bamboo skewer is also good for cleaning up some lines. So I find that sometimes the simplest tools can do quite a bit. And here I'm just adding some lines, kind of like an exaggerated eyebrow. And other lines kind of in other parts of the face, just to give it a little bit more textural interest. And when you draw your lines, you notice I'm drawing somewhat quickly. Sometimes I find that if you really kind of draw that line quickly with kind of an assured stroke, it can look cleaner. So as you can see here, I took that newspaper out so I can really get inside the mouth area, and just to make sure that I've cleaned that and the newspaper didn't get in the way. And same thing here with the eyes. And I'm just about done. Any little final touch up I might do after it sits for a few days, and then I can call it a finished cultural mask.